Following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFN Geek coming to you with what will hopefully be a successful video, and tonight we are going to be taking a look at Transformers Studio Series, Transformers the movie, or as it's simply known as Studio Series 86, the Transformers Generation 1 movie Deluxe Class Jazz. Jazz is one of six Transformers action figures that comprises what will hopefully be Wave 1 of the Studio Series 86 line. Before I continue on with the video, a special shout out to one of my good friends and fellow Transformers collector, Jay Holla. Thank you, Jay Holla. Shout out to you. There's a link down to Jay Holla's YouTube channel in the video description. He was nice enough at the beginning of the year to hook me up with Studio Series 86 Jazz. So this video review is also a thank you to him. And this was the first Transformers figure I purchased for this year. Jay Holla sent Jazz to me way back in January. So Jay Holla, if you end up watching my review, I apologize for getting the video out 2 months later, but a lot has been going on in my life, and that's the reason why it's late. I am very behind in my Transformers reviews, but I'm hoping I'll be able to catch up over the next few weeks. So here's a close-up of Jazz inside his box. You can see there he is right there in all his splendor and glory. Jazz is one of my all-time favorite Transformers characters, and so when it was announced that Jazz was going to be one of the 6 characters released in Wave 1 of the Studio Series 86 line, I decided that he was going to be one of the Transformers characters that I would pick up and add to my collection. And I apologize for the lighting not being that great. I'll see if I can remedy that for future reviews. So here's the back of Jazz's box. There's his robot mode, his alternate mode. He transforms in just 20 steps, and like all the Studio Series Transformers, the interior of Jazz's box opens up and becomes a backdrop. For Jazz, it's Moonbase 2, which is where he was stationed in the Transformers Generation 1 movie. One minor gripe that some collectors have had with Studio Series Jazz is that his racing number is 14 instead of the number 4, as it's traditionally been. But I saw a video review once on YouTube, I can't remember who did it, but someone pointed out that when Jazz was still a part of Takara Tomi's Diaclone Robots line before he became a Transformers character, he was the 14th Diaclone robot to be released in that line, so that's what his racing number B14 is a call out to. And Jazz's one-sentence bio reads, Autobot Jazz makes a futile escape as Unicron devours Moonbase 1. Oh yeah, so he was on Moonbase 1, I forgot. Apologies for that. So yes, there's one last look at Jazz inside of his box. We will get him opened up, take him out, and take a close look at him. And hopefully be able to do some size comparisons. And yes, I am just really excited to finally have Jazz in my collection. Alrighty, so here's Jazz out of his box. And he is a pretty decent sized, he's a pretty decent action figure of Jazz. One of the big excitements about Studio Series 86 Jazz is that he's the first action figure of Jazz in which his doors, unlike his Generation 1 counterpart, they are designed to fold into his back, so he doesn't have his wing doors sticking off the back of him, unlike his Generation 1 action figure. Part of the reason for having Jazz's doors, or the reason he didn't have them in the cartoon, was because Sumbo Studios wanted to make the Transformers characters slightly more streamlined than their actual action figures were. And they went through a lot of designs that changed their cartoon appearances compared to their action figures, and Jazz was one of the characters to undergo that change from action figure to cartoon. So Jazz's articulation, it's pretty the same for any deluxe class figure. His head's on a ball joint, so he can look left and right. And he's got universal jointed shoulders, so his arms can go forwards and backwards, left and right. He can move his arm out that far at the shoulder, swivel jointed bicep, hinge jointed at his elbows. He does have a waist articulation, which is fairly decent, although of course it's not going to do it right now. he's got universal jointed hips, so his legs can go forward and back, inward and outward. Swivel joint at his swivel joint in his thighs, although it's very tight on my copy, and so trying to do the swivel at the thigh actually moves the swivel joint in the hip. Hinge knees, although they're actually it's hard to tell with the black plastic, but there's actually a double joint that's supposed to lock in place, but the tab is just so small that it unhooks itself, so that's the proper knee joint right there. And then, of course, he does have foot articulation, but that's primarily a transformation joint. He does have ankle rockers, although they're right there. You can tell they're pretty stiff. So yeah, I'm probably not going to mess around with those too much. But yeah, all in all, in robot mode, Studio Series Jazz, he is a pretty decent Transformers character. There's technically two configurations you can have for Jazz's doors. You can have them folding inward onto the backpack, or when you get Jazz out of his box for the first time, they're folded outwards like that. And I tried to fold them in a moment ago, but they felt like they were going to be really tight, and I think that's one of the reasons why Jazz, as is now infamously considered one of the not so great Studio Series 86 Transformers figures, and it's that Jazz's entire backpack, which is the roof and all the windows, the windshield, door windows, and the back window of his vehicle mode, Jazz's backpack is made out of clear plastic that's been painted white and also red and blue on his stripes. Perhaps I can't tell. Well, I believe the car doors that have his racing numbers, though, whereas these are actually white plastic. But yes, Jazz's entire backpack is made out of clear plastic, and in worst case scenarios, the clear plastic has been shattering off completely. Part of the reason why that is if you look right there, when you transform Jazz back and forth between his alt mode and his robot mode, his clear plastic backpack, it requires, can't really see it down there, it is. His backpack uses two hinge joints made out of white plastic to successfully transform him back and forth between his robot mode and his alternate mode. And unfortunately, those two hinge joints rely on clear plastic to successfully transform Jazz. Just a word of advice from all the video reviews I've seen and the stories I've witnessed of breakage with Studio Series Jazz. Me personally, even though on the instruction sheet and on his product photos it recommends folding his doors inward, I personally am going to leave them folded outward because it feels like it's putting a lot less stress on Jazz's backpack compared to having them folded in. So even though that was one of the selling points and features of Studio Series 86 Jazz was his doors folding into his back, making him Generation 1 cartoon accurate, I'm not going to do that because it's clear plastic, and it feels to me, in the few seconds I've had Jazz out of his box, that leaving his doors folded outward will increase his longevity as a Transformers character. So, moving myself over, hopefully I won't bump my camera. For some size comparisons in robot mode, I will bring out the rest of my deluxe class figures that are based off of Generation 1 Jazz, so bringing them out in the order that they were released. First up, here is Studio Series 86 Jazz compared to the 2011 Transformers Reveal the Shield Jazz, and this remains the definitive Jazz action figure to me personally. This was the first deluxe Generation 1 Jazz figure I ever purchased, and even though Studio Series Jazz is a lot more screen accurate to his appearance in the G1 cartoon, the Reveal the Shield Deluxe Class Jazz figure, this is the essential Jazz figure to have in your Transformers collection. And unfortunately, this figure was released back in 2011, and so this is an example of how over the last decade, from 2011 to the current year of 2021, how Hasbro and Takara Tomy have been downsizing Deluxe Class Transformers figures, because Reveal the Shield Jazz was the average sized Deluxe Class Transformers figure back in 2011 when the decade of the 2010s got started. But right after that, the economies of the United States and the U.S. and Japan both went downhill, and so that's when Transformers figures really started to get downsized. Was shortly after Reveal the Shield Jazz's release. So for a size comparison with another Jazz figure, here is the 2012 Fall of Cybertron Jazz figure, and you can see the Studio Series 86 Jazz is roughly the same size as this version of Jazz, the Fall of Cybertron video game version. There they are standing side by side, so depending on how you have the legs posed, they are roughly the same size as each other. But there are a lot of Transformers fans and collectors who always felt that Fall of Cybertron Jazz was one of the smaller deluxe class Transformers figures, and the Fall of Cybertron version of Jazz, while it is the most Cybertronian looking alt mode Jazz that I have in my collection, it's my least favorite Jazz figure. And for one last size comparison in robot mode, here also is the previously released Jazz figure before the Studio Series 86 deluxe figure. See if I can get him to stand properly. A little heavy because I have his accessories hanging off the back of him, but here is the Power of the Primes version of Jazz that was released in 2018. And when it comes to the Power of the Primes version of Jazz, even without the controversial first release version of him, which I think I have, yeah, the version of Jazz that I have, the version of Power of the Primes Jazz that I have is the first release version, where right underneath that Autobot logo is 4 letters in Cybertronian hieroglyphs. But even without that, a controversial tampograph on him, Power of the Primes Jazz has been hit or miss with most Transformers fans and collectors, and most collectors either love or hate Power of the Primes Jazz, as not only because he's a combiner, but also because of how his proportions are where his parts of his vehicle mode end up in robot mode, particularly his car doors ending up on the bottom of his arms instead of hanging off of his back, like the Reveal the Shield Jazz figure, which this is where the doors on the original Generation 1 action figure of Jazz were positioned, was there on the shoulders. Well, so as far as which of these Jazzes are my most favorites to least favorite, yeah, this going right to left, these Jazz figures are all lined up in my order from most favorite to least favorite. None of the Jazz figures released in more recent years have topped the Reveal the Shield Jazz figure. Studio Series 86 Jazz, as he's not perfect, but then he's not completely terrible. Power of the Primes Jazz, as I think he's a decent action figure of Jazz, even though he's a combiner. I'm still glad that we got him in the Power of the Primes line back in 2018. And then for the Fall of Cybertron version of Jazz, I honestly think that Hasbro and Takara missed the mark with him. But since this video is about Studio Series 86 Jazz, we will really remove his compatriots for now, and we will get him transformed into his alternate mode. I'm not going to do the transformation on camera because there's plenty of reviews out there of actually showing Jazz's transformation on camera. And also I want to be cautious about transforming his backpack for the first time. So we will be back in 1 moment. Alright, so here is Jazz transformed into his alternate mode and transforming him into his vehicle mode for the first time. I can honestly see all the fear and concern everyone has about the backpack / window areas breaking off easily, because when you get Jazz transformed into his alt mode, you really do have to snap the windshield and the windows down into place, and it honestly does feel as though if you were to transform Jazz back and forth between robot and vehicle mode multiple times, that those clear plastic parts could break off very easily. So on a flat surface, Jazz does roll fairly well, although the cardboard on the back of his box is preventing the wheels from spinning perfectly. But yeah, they do spin decently enough. One thing that's irked a lot of collectors, and I'm a little OCD about it as well, is that black pegs are used to hold the middle wheels, the front wheels I should say, in place, while the back wheels have their own pegs on them. So the middle section of Jazz's front wheels have black spots on them, while so that just looks a little awkward like that. And unfortunately, the only place to store Jazz's laser gun is right up on top of the roof of his alternate mode, so you have two configurations. You can either have it pointing backwards or pointing forwards if you want Jazz to have a symmetrical look to his alt mode. So, setting his box aside and see if I can get my camera moved back far enough. And if I apologize, I didn't transform the other Jazz figures into their alt modes, but I do have a special size comparison of sorts. So, see, apologize for moving my camera. I'm around, and I don't want to stop the video at this point. But let me see if I can get in here. It's a bad angle. The camera I use sometimes to make my videos, the wire doesn't come out of the back center of it, it comes off to the side, and so it makes the camera sit at a weird angle, and I have to try and stuff something on it to try and get it to line up decently enough. So, for a special size comparison in alt mode, I again apologize for not bringing out the other Jazz figures for Studio Series Jazz in his alt mode, but for some special size comparisons, here from the Siege line, we have there's Mirage. Just reaching over to get these guys. Nice over here. Here from the Siege line also is Hound. I'll set him off to the back. And here is Sideswipe. And then from the Earthrise line, here is Sunstreaker. Here's Wheeljack. Here's Trailbreaker from Earthrise. Blue Streak. Prowl. Here's Ratchet. And here also is Ironhide. Alrighty, so with the release of Jazz in the Studio Series 86 line, all 11 of the 1984 Autobot cars, or standard-sized Autobots as they were originally known as, these are basically the, to use modern-day terminology, these are the original deluxe class Autobots from the Generation 1 line that were released back in 1984. So with the release of Jazz in the Studio Series 86 line, over the last 3 years, 3 individual years, 2019, 2020, and the current year of 2021. It was actually 2 years' time. I'm just so excited to have Studio Series 86 Jazz. I can't get out of the point I'm trying to make, which is that with Jazz's release, all 11 of the original deluxe class sized Autobots have been given, once again, updated deluxe class action figures from Hasbro and Takara Tomy. I apologize for having Trailbreaker, Blue Streak, and Hound in shadow there in the background. I don't know if I can reach my flashlight. Let me see if I can. Alrighty, so I was able to grab my flashlight, and the flashlight's glowing off some of the windshields. You can see it right there on Ratchet's windshield. If I bring it over here, it's reflecting off of Trailbreakers. But yeah, all in all, I'm really excited to have all these guys. It's rumored right now that we might get an Earthrise action figure of Sideswipe and maybe Mirage. If we do, I also hope we get an Earthrise figure of Hound. Prowl, Blue Streak, Ratchet, and Ironhide were also given deluxe class figures in the Siege line. And a lot of Transformers fans and collectors are hoping that maybe possibly all 11 of the 1984 deluxe class Autobots will be given both Cybertronian and Earth alt mode deluxe class figures. But so far, out of all 11 of these guys, it's only been Prowl, Sideswipe, Prowl, Blue Streak, Ratchet, and Ironhide that have been given 2 deluxe class figures in the War for Cybertron trilogy. And on that note, a lot of Transformers fans and collectors have been saying that Jazz feels like he should have been a War for Cybertron trilogy figure. Jazz is almost the same size as Prowl and Blue Streak. He does have almost the same proportions that they do. But yeah, for me personally, it does feel as though Jazz was supposed to be a War for Cybertron trilogy deluxe class figure. But regardless, I genuinely enjoy having Jazz now on my Transformers collection. So my final thoughts on Transformers Studio Series 86 Jazz. Do I recommend getting him and adding to your collection? I do recommend getting him, but I do recommend that when you actually transform him back and forth between robot mode and alt mode, I highly recommend you proceed with caution, and be very careful when transforming him. Unfortunately, due to all the clear plastic used on Studio Series 86 Jazz, he is unfortunately a fragile Transformers action figure, and he can break very easily. But all in all, I do enjoy his robot mode. I do enjoy his alternate mode, especially the fact that the proportions of his alt mode are similar to his Generation 1 action figure. So I do recommend getting Studio Series 86 Jazz. Just be very, very careful when you mess around with him, because chances are you could break a piece of him off and you would have to buy a duplicate copy so you wouldn't have one that's broken. A lot of Transformers fans and collectors have said that they would have preferred if the clear plastic parts on Jazz were made out of solid plastic. Basically, the word from Transformers fans and collectors has been they prefer Transformers that don't have clear plastic. So, if the main reason why Hasbro and Takara use clear plastic is to make the windows on their vehicle modes look like actual glass by having it be able to look inside, most Transformers fans and collectors have come to the same agreement that they would prefer a solid plastic with the windows painted a metallic color, either metallic silver or metallic blue, because using clear plastic is one of the rare cases where switching it out with solid plastic would actually be advantage to a Transformers action figure, because even though the clear plastic does make the Transformers characters somewhat more of a robot in disguise, since they have actual clear windows on them, it reduces the longevity and the stamina, the endurance of a Transformers action figure to possess. But yes, despite the controversy surrounding Studio Series Jazz, I do recommend getting him and adding him to your Transformers collection. He's not the worst Jazz figure that we've gotten, and he's certainly not the worst Transformers figure to be released in recent years. And I do highly recommend getting him, especially if you're a fan of Jazz like I am. So this has been the TF Fan Geek. This has been my review of Transformers Studio Series 86 Jazz. As I hope you'll stop by and visit, subscribe to Jay Holla's channel. Thank you once again, Jay Holla, for finding Jazz for me. I have never seen Jazz at my local Target store, so that's a very big thank you to Jay Holla, because Jazz is one of the action figures that I haven't seen where I live in my area of California. So thank you guys all so much. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Ring the bell icon for notification. And until next time, you guys, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.